Welcome to the renamed Parenting Advice Redefined for Today's World podcast. This is the podcast we dive into the challenges and triumphs of parenting teens in today's complex world. And today we are thrilled to welcome a guest who truly embodies the heart of a teacher and the passion of a mentor. Since 1999, Lisa Marker Robbins has supported thousands of students as an independent college counselor, guiding them through one of the most pivotal transitions of their lives. In 2010, she sharpened her focus on college major and career coaching, recognizing that these decisions are the cornerstone of successful post-high school planning. Lisa has transformed the future of over 4,000 students using her proven three-pillar framework, helping them move from feeling overwhelmed and uncertain to clear, confident, and motivated in their next steps. Her groundbreaking work even caught the attention of the Forbes magazine, which in 2018 highlighted her framework as a critical first step in improving the ROI of a college education. Today, Lisa joins us to share her wisdom, actionable strategies, and inspiring story to help us guide our teens toward fulfilling futures. Get ready to learn how to support your teen through the often stressful process of post-high school planning and discover how you, as a parent, can be their greatest ally in building a future they're excited about. Welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. First, I want to hear, what is with this? Why are you here? What are you doing? What's your story? What's your mission? Tell us all about Lisa.
Absolutely. So as a Master Certified Berkman Coach, so that's a personality assessment that, as you said, I've used with over 4,000 people to date. I really am passionate about people of all ages, so this will resonate with your listeners, parents as well, building the self-awareness so that they can design a path that fits them instead of just drifting forward kind of aimlessly. I think self-awareness is the biggest key to that. And so that's what I start with is I help people build self-awareness. Well, occasionally that's parents or those that are working with teens or business owners. My real passion is this age group, and it has been since 1991. I graduated. I was a high school teacher for 8 years. And because I had enough self-awareness to know I should probably be out on my own and not an employee, I started my first business. And I continued, though, working with teens. And honestly, if we're working with teens, we're working with their parents, right? We're supporting both.
Yes. 1,000%. Yes.
So I truly believe every student as they graduate, whether that is from high school or from college, university, that they can make informed choices about what's going to come after graduation. It's not always going to be college for everybody. Just because of my history, I've worked with more college-bound teens than not. But, we've got fewer kids going to college, and everybody deserves to be able to make informed decisions about what comes after graduation. So that's why I'm here. That's what I'm doubling down on.
I love it. We have something in common, that teaching high school and loving teenagers. I think, sometimes I say that to people and sometimes they go, what?
I know, they think we're crazy.
I'm telling you, they're just the best. And if you can scratch the ego a little bit, get rid of it a little bit, you can really dive into some great relationships with teenagers. And sometimes I think we feel like, oh, we know better and don't talk to me like that. And all of those crazy conversations, if you can shift things a little bit. And again, like the podcast says, for today's world,
yes,
you can really transform your relationships. And that's why we're here for sure. So I want to start with this post-secondary stuff and parents. I guess I want to start with, when do we start having these conversations that is realistic and authentic without pushing and shoving and driving information down their throat in grade 7 about being a doctor? Where do we naturally start talking about these things? And how do we start these conversations?
If you, first of all, look at it as a two-phased approach, I think would be helpful. There are a lot of school districts, I'm in Ohio, here in the US, that have started adding a K through 12. So let's go back to that. K through 12 career counselor or component, right? And while that might sound like, what? That is too much. When we think about baby steps, that's what we're talking about, dipping our toes in the water. So it's really when our kids are little, kindergarten, elementary school, talking about the jobs that they see going on around them, right? Imagining, like, what do you think that that person loves about their job or doesn't? You'll start to get insights even about your little one's wiring. And if you start having those conversations, you're normalizing it early on so that by the time you get to junior high, middle school, 7th grade, as you said, we're not going to say, oh, it's time to look at how we become a doctor. They're ready to have a little bit more serious conversations about it and maybe formally exploring some stuff, whether it's just online or talking to a uncle at, Christmas gathering about, oh, tell us a little bit about your job. And so we're easing into it. Then it's not all of a sudden like, oh, you're a junior in high school. Oh, my word, graduation's coming. We've got to get going. Yeah. That creates overwhelm. That makes them just freeze up. And so let's tiptoe into it and just have conversations. But, like you said, kids can start kicking and screaming. The flip side of this is also, though, graduation's coming. There's some very real deadlines that we can't undo and we can't skip. So it's tricky, right? It's like sometimes you have to push your kid a little bit before they maybe are ready on their own. But that's truly because there are deadlines in their future. And if they are college bound, those deadlines are college applications.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop for a second and say, for the mom on the way home from work right now, who just said, holy shit, my kid's in grade 11. I haven't said a word. What do I do? Is it too late?
It's never too late. So I will, I'll go back to, I was recently actually talking to somebody who is 30, works for a national, I'm going to just say a pro athlete program in the in-house council for that group. And even at 30, as we talked about what this person's next move was going to be, there were some limitations. And those limitations were around the fact, like, she didn't want to move too far away from family, right? She'd already gone to law school. She doesn't have the money to go pay for another degree. She actually didn't have the desire to go to school any longer, even if money were no object. So the older we get, there are some limitations around what's going to be available to us. But for that mom of a junior who's like, whoa, I screwed up here. You didn't screw up. I mean, how many times do we say our first kid's an experiment? And I'll admit to that. I have 3 kids. You've got adult kids too. So
sorry, son.
Yeah, you feel the same way. Mine was a son too. It's like, sorry. We do it a little differently with the next.
We have more pictures of them.
Yes, we do. So that there's the offset. Absolutely. And their baby book looks better, right? Yes. I mean, I had twins the second time around. They're 23 now. They don't have baby books, right? I'll just admit to it here publicly. But we learn our lessons. I always say things are not a mistake. We learn some lessons, but it is time to get going, right? We give a quiz like, are you too early, right on time, or too late? And the short piece of that is, if you have a 9th grader to do formalized college advising, you're too early. Yeah. Just keep having those conversations at home. If you have a 10th or 11th grader, you're right on time. And by the time we're ending junior year, 11th grade, there are going to be some limited options, because even some colleges they only admit to like some majors. If the student applies as a senior in high school, you can't switch into that major later once you're on campus. So when I say that there are some limited options, the older we get, some options are going to be off the table.
Okay. So so I'm going to segue right into the parent involvement here. How much involvement should the parent have in not just the decisions, but in the actual application piece? Like me being in the high school for 25 years, totally had parents going, oh, I didn't finish filling out his application yet. I pushed him. I said the other, and I want to know, like, we want to coach, we want to mentor, we want to support, but at what point do we go, okay, I need to step back a little bit? How much involvement should a parent have?
In the actual application to college, other than completing financial aid forms that are going to require your personal financial information, which I've found there's a big continuum of how much parents are willing to share with their kiddos, right? My kids don't know how much money I make. They knew how much money I had saved for college, or now we're doing wedding planning, things like that. So filling out financial aid forms. If your student's going to put in an early decision application, which is binding here in the US, then you would sign off on agreement for that. But otherwise, you should not be in the application. I've seen a lot of parents not even know what their child's writing their college essays about. It's their essay. A year from now, tell yourself they're going to be out in the wild on the college campus. You can't even call the college and ask anything about them. It would be illegal for them to even admit that they are an enrolled student at that school. So you can't go from waking them up, helping them with their essay, putting in their grades into their application, to them out in the wild. They will not do well.
No.
They won't have the right skills. And building those skills, if you start again with fostering this independence and supporting your teen or even your child with skill development, they'll be well equipped to do these things. And they'll have some skills that are going to benefit them in the world of work for the career path that they choose.
Just as you say that, I'm going to drop a little promo for episode 5, Helicopter Parenting, and the link will be in the show notes, just so that you have an idea what we're talking about here.
Yes.
So let's talk about, I want to go to, you have 3 pillars, and I really want to make sure we cover those in this episode. And I went through all of your website, and I did the quiz, which I thought was very cool, of whether you are, at the stage where you're ready for coaching for your teen, for post-secondary, which was excellent. But you also have 3 pillars that are, I guess, prominent in your coaching and prominent in your process. Can you talk about the pillars?
Absolutely. So the first one goes back to building self-awareness. So it's about knowing yourself well. Yeah. And we do that through, you can work on this on your own. The way that I do it is we give every student in my course the Berkman Personality Assessment. I do think assessments have their place, but no assessment should ever say, oh, you took a quiz and you should go be a teacher or whatever it is, right? If you're going to allow an assessment to do that, that's too much. It should only give you insights for conversation and building some self-awareness. But knowing your self-awareness goes beyond that hardwired personality. So that first step is also about being aware of your values. And parents, your kiddos' values may not always be your values. And that can be a hard one because you've raised them to embody your values as well. And I've gone through times where I even a single kiddo of my own adult children, I can think there were times that they were more aligned with me and times where they weren't. And then in some areas they came back over to being aligned with me, but in others they didn't. It's okay.
Yeah.
Validating their experience as their own will keep them talking to you through this process. And validation does not equal agreement. So
yes, I love that. Yes.
It's okay to empathize and validate. It does not equal agreement. And I think a lot of parents make the mistake of thinking, if my kid's heading on a path that I didn't picture for them, or they have a value or a belief that I didn't raise them to have, that me giving any kind of empathy or listening to them is agreeing with them. It's not. It's only going to foster healthy conversations. So it's about values, it's about hardwired personality, and it's about getting real about your grades. We have on my own podcast, we've talked a lot about grade inflation in a post-COVID world. It's real.
Yes.
And we have to be really honest with ourselves, teens and parents, be realistic about the rigor of what it takes to earn a specific degree. And you might not be up to it, right? So really investigating. So that's the self-awareness piece.
Mhm.
The second piece is knowing careers. So investigating careers, researching them, and curating experiences so you can vet them. It's funny, I'll sometimes have a kid say, like, I'm thinking about if I'd make a good actuary. Do you think that's a job I would like? And I always know they have a family member who's an actuary because no teenager knows what an actuary is ever. It's like and then I'll go, oh, so who in your family's an actuary? Oh, my uncle is. And he mentioned it because I'm good at math. And those are great conversations to be having. They
Yeah.
shouldn't be the guiding principle, but those are good conversations to have. So kids and parents, frankly, only know the jobs that they're exposed to.
Mhm.
Jobs are rapidly changing.
Yeah.
And so we have to account for that. But there will be through lines because I often get people, they'll say, like, well, how can you choose if the jobs that you're considering might not even exist now? Like, we don't know what's going to be out there on the menu of options.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we don't make a decision now. There will be those through lines. Like I have a course, it is delivered online, and we have live coaching calls with it, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I couldn't have done that 10 years ago. The technology did not exist.
Yeah.
But you know what the through line is? I still support teenagers and work with their parents in giving guidance so they can create better futures. So don't let that be a false roadblock. I think that's just an excuse for not doing the work.
Yeah.
So when it comes to knowing careers, it's really about, first of all, in the Berkman, we give them a list of careers that your teen looks like adults who are already happily working in these careers.
Mhm.
We go from, oh, the world's your oyster, you can be anything,
Yeah.
down to a more limited options. You look like the people who like these jobs. Now let's just investigate those jobs. Research them online, then curate some experiences. We teach about 6 different types of curated experiences to get up close and personal. And then after you do that, the third step's really easy. Find out how you become that thing. It might be a degree, it might not. It might be with certifications, it might be with some experiences. And so how do we get there? Know your path.
Yeah.
And that's it. 3
That's
pillars.
so good. So I want to say, is there a process too of, this is what I never want to do? Like that was so easy for me, even in high school. I'm like, I will never do that. Never, ever, ever. I will never be a doctor. I can't stand piercing skin. I will never be a police officer. I don't want to get shot. And that was one of the great things about getting things off the table. Is that something that comes into conversations when you have parents and teens together where they're like, oh, you should try this. And the teen's like, hard no.
So, and that's just, yes, it absolutely does. So sometimes even in that like more limited list we give them, so we funnel down to like, you look like the adults who are being happy. Your brain and your wiring might look like somebody who would enjoy, the doctor piece. Let's just go with that one.
Mm-hmm.
But you might go like, I do not have a stomach for that. One of my previous clients, she looked like she would be a happy nurse or doctor, somebody in the medical field, healthcare field. And she had had a critically ill sibling, and the family had spent so many years in the hospital. And that sibling actually ended up passing. And she was like, if I never see the inside of a doctor's office, a hospital, of course, right?
Yeah.
So there are a million reasons why we might rule something out. But the deeper question is, I always say, okay, that's great. Why? Like, what do we know about that doesn't fit? So why we rule something out is as important as why we might be considering it. And when you get down to final choices, sometimes students take, multiple careers through the process that I have, this framework.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, they have to make a choice in what they're going to pursue. And so as we do that, the final reason to choose, B over A or A over B might be some like minute little detail, right? Or it might be a big detail, but it's the one thing that's going to break the tie. So I know, okay, this is the path forward that I'm going to begin to pursue.
Yeah. And so based on my history, there was no this is what you're going to do. This is what the program you're in. And there's no changing your mind. This is it. See you when you're 62. Let's maybe apply for early retirement if you hate it. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes. So first of all, we're not making a forever decision. I always joke around and say, I don't believe in soulmates, and my husband knows that. So I don't believe in them romantically. I don't believe in them with a job. We have to work hard at anything we do, right? And we're not stuck forever in anything. You are making, first of all, a decision on a first step into career, not a forever step.
Yeah.
And this will evolve. There's career advising that if we do it right, I do think it's best done in this K through 12 setting. Colleges have career services, but I've not seen a lot of campuses that do a great job with this. I recently worked with a student from the University of Notre Dame University, and she was not getting supported. Her mom put her to work with me, and I could not believe the lack of quality in the resume template they gave from Notre Dame.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got it into our format, got it out there, and then she was able to get internships. We recently had, just last week, we had somebody enroll in the course where they knew about us in the spring. The daughter was a senior. That's when they first heard about us. And they thought, well, she'll get to school and she'll get the support she needs. Well, it's November of her freshman year. She didn't get the support she needed at the University of Virginia. Again, a highly selective school. And so they're looking for outside support. So when I say career advising, in my opinion and experience, is best done K-12, I still believe that. Now, with that said, career development is lifelong. They're two different things.
So true.
You had to learn how to do a podcast. I had to learn how to do a podcast for my show as well, that you've been a fantastic guest on. But that's a development piece that impacts career. So we have to think long game, marathon, in career development, shorter game on career advising. If you do it right, you hopefully don't need a bunch of career advising after graduation.
Yeah. So from high school, I had always wanted to be a lawyer. Met somebody who was a hairdresser. Threw lawyers out the window. Went to private hairdressing school. Then we opened a few salons. And then I got bored with that. And we opened a little restaurant in between, little Italian bistro in between. And still bored. So found out that you could teach hairdressing. Okay, so I went to a private hairdressing school to teach hairdressing, and then I started teaching hairdressing in the public school system, fell in love with it, and then I fell in love with students who had some special needs in these classrooms, and I thought, okay, so did that for a couple of years. When you could do it as a trade, you could do it. Then I wanted to go full force. Left my two little kids at home for a little while. Off to university, got my teacher bachelor that I needed, and started teaching in the high school. Really fell in love with special education, became a special education specialist, ran a special education department, just retired last year to start the podcast about parenting teens. So nothing is permanent, and everything was, the next step would just become available because I was loving what I was doing, and then next door just opened.
Well, I also, what I heard in your story, Cheryl, as a career coach, there is a through line there about creativity. So one of the things we talk about is, as it relates to the Berkman, is Berkman blue personality traits, blue interest, and they are artistic, literary, musical. Blue is highly creative. Sometimes, though, it's just designing solutions, creative solutions to problems, which you even did as a special educator. There's no other type of education that requires more creative problem solving than special education.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
you probably had you been, and when you were teaching before that, and you were teaching hair, you still were in that creative, right? So there's this component of you I see, like caring for people and creativity, creative problem solving. And so when people tell their stories and I listen, I'm like, there are those through lines. So while it might look different, while the technology might not exist right now to do the thing, it will come together. And if we're true to ourselves, if we build that high self-awareness, we see fewer like, I'm going to start out as an engineer and then I'm going to become a social worker, right?
Yeah. And I spent, I would say, up until maybe the last couple of years, I always woke up before the alarm because I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I always said that to my kids growing up. I don't care what you do, just wake up before the alarm. Was my indication that I just couldn't wait to get in. I couldn't wait to do what I was doing. And the day always went by fast. And it was just, and you're right. I like always would pride myself on being able to think outside the box with something because it was just, so it's funny you would say that because you're right, is a through line. That's so cool.
Well, 4,000 of these you can pick up even through conversations, some of those things. I think one difference though for you and me is it didn't cost, like given our ages, it did not cost what it costs now to go to college, right?
Yes.
So and again, this is about like the options, some options come off the table, or another way we could put it is the lane that you're in is very wide when you're younger. Many things are possible. And then the lane narrows. Like, my husband and I together, we have 5 adult children. 4 of them live here in Cincinnati, Ohio. One of them lives in Missouri. Even if I wanted to pursue something that was outside Cincinnati, and my aging parents are here, I'm not leaving Cincinnati. So my lane narrowed. That's one thing that narrows my lane, right? But with the cost of college being what it is now, in my last one graduated just this spring, in the spring of 24. So I finally got a pay raise there, and now I'm turning around paying for some weddings. But we just can't afford to make missteps. I think we can afford fewer missteps. And so I think I know that it makes doing the work when our kiddos are still in our home before they're out in the wild on their own more important.
Yeah. I'd like to think, as you talk about cost, everything is so exorbitant now. So for parents who did their own application process and went to their own post-secondary institutions, what is the evolution between how we applied and went and that process, even just briefly, like what stands out for you to go, oh, that's totally different now besides cost? What would be something that stands out?
So even if I look back to 1999 was when I started my first company, and I sold that company in 24. And now I'm only in this company that I've had for 5 years. But we used paper to apply to college in pens or typewriters. So that's changed. Everything's online. Even now, applications are going to be between $50 and $100 per school. So it's expensive even to apply. I have some kids thinking they're going to put 20 applications out, and that's just not realistic for a lot of families financially. The number of essays that school kids will have to write, like I don't even remember, but I'm sure we wrote like one short essay. They looked at our grades and the classes that we were taking and our ACT or SAT score, and that was the end of the day. Now, a lot of schools will have supplemental essays. And by the way, one of the most common essays is, why do you want to study that major at our school? So it's not just that you're checking, I'm applying to whatever major, on clicking the box on the application. It's the fact that you're going to have to explain what you've done in the past that has given you confidence to know what you want to do in the future, and that this particular major and that university is part of that equation. It's a good fit for you. So
Interesting. I love this conversation. I feel like you really add a sense of calm, a sense of we can get through this. There are steps to take. So if parents are sitting there sweating it out. Your kids are sweating it out, and they're scared. You don't have to go it alone, right? You've got
Right.
Lisa here to help. And again, thanks to online and COVID, everything's normal to do it like this. Anybody around the world can get some
I
help.
was doing it online a long time before this, just through I actually back then used to go to meeting and go to webinar, and then the world switched to Zoom, and I'm like, oh, it made my life a lot easier.
I love it. Lisa, where can we find you? How can we work with you? Tell us all about Lisa.
Absolutely. So we have a special video that explains how we work, why, kind of gives the context of why this is so important. Does an even deeper dive to the things that we talked about today, Cheryl. Mm-hmm. And so I've made a really easy link for your listeners. It's at Flourish, FLOURISH, flourishcoachingco.com/Cheryl. And so if they go there, and I'll be sure you get it, and it can be in your show notes, so anybody can find it easily, either by clicking or just typing it in. We've got a video there, explains the why. And when you ask to see the video, then just below the video, we explain how the course works. So we are open enrollment all the time. And I show up live every single month. I actually tonight have our live call where I take questions and we work on mindset. You hit on something important, and it is that everything in our minds is figure outable. And that's how we approach this. We approach it in community. We approach it in cheering each other on, being inspired by one another's wins and lessons and stories, and knowing that everything is figure outable. There are no failures as long as there's a lesson in it. And if you have some preconceived ideas of what you think you might want to do, you're just going to hold it loosely while you do the work to be able to make sure that you're heading down the right path.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm so glad to have you here. And I'm so happy with the work that you're doing. It's so important. Coming out of the teaching profession, I know that there's this disconnect and this gap and expectations and stress. And it can, you don't want to send your kid off to university or college with this tension and this disconnect because you could not get that together. So here's your answer, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Parenting Teens Advice Redefined for Today's World.